Hi and welcome to Hardass Reviews, and today we're back to phones, specifically the Amazon Fire Phone. And today I have come across this, well I've acquired this. Now I'll put this up at face level and move my hands out of the way. This is the Amazon Fire Phone. Specs: 2.2 quad-core processor with 2 gigahertz of RAM and a 13 megapixel camera on the back, and I think a 2 megapixel camera on the front. It has a 4.7 inch screen, and it's Amazon's first foray into mobile phones. Now, I've watched countless reviews on this phone, and in almost every review, I would say probably 90%, 95% of the reviews, they have absolutely trashed the phone. Now, I thought to myself, well, why are they trashing the phone? Why exactly are they trashing the phone? You're talking 4.7 inch screen, 13 megapixel camera, and so on. But the main criticism seems to be this, that it's Amazon. And I'm thinking, well, of course it's Amazon. This is Amazon's, first move into mobile phones, which is exactly the same as when Apple released the iPod, then they released the iPhone and changed people's attitudes towards phones in general and spawned the birth of the smartphone. Now, I don't see where the criticism lies, and I actually will say straight off that I think the phone is fantastic. I think it's an absolutely fantastic phone. It has Gorilla Glass back and front. It's also been criticised for looking too much like the Nexus 4. Well, I don't think that should be a criticism. I think that should be a compliment. The Nexus 4 is an excellent phone, once again. 4.6/7 inch screen and glass back and front, around a metal, with rubber, gloss rubber covered frame around the edges. Now, they say there are no Google apps on there. You have to, you have to side install Google Apps. Now I'm thinking, well, it's not a Google phone, so what do you expect? Now, I don't know what this. I mean, Amazon and Google are rivals, so you're not going to get a lot of Google stuff. It's exactly the same as when Apple released their iPhones. There wasn't a lot of Google stuff. I mean, now that you can get a lot of Google apps, from Google Maps to Google Earth and Music and so on iPhones. But iPhones still restrict you. iPhones still restrict you. On an iPhone, you can share to very few, platforms. You can share to Facebook, you can share to Twitter, you can share to emails, and you can copy to clipboard. And in the new iOS, they've increased that. I think you can share to Facebook Messenger and LinkedIn at times, and Google Plus. That is it. That is absolutely it. Whereas on Android, you can share to all platforms. You can have 18. I mean, on my Android, I can have maybe 18 to 23 different apps that I can share to, from Flipboard to WordPress, Instapaper, lots of Premiere apps that you can share to. But on iOS, you can share to very little, and they restrict you to iTunes. iPhones are governed by iTunes, yet people don't have a problem with iPhones. Well, some people have problems with iPhones. But the criticism for Amazon is ridiculous, in my opinion. I will come out and say it is absolutely ridiculous, because the Amazon phone is it's a gorgeous phone. People say, oh, it's boring, it's gimmicky. Well, all phones are gimmicky. They say the dynamic perspective, which is you have a lens, you have a camera lens on all four corners at the front, on the front facing screen, and those cameras follow your face and project an image which moves on the screen. So if you move your head to one side, it's like you're looking round the corner of something, or the page moves with you, so it's like you're looking towards the edge or round to the side of the page, or round to the side of a building or a picture, or if you're looking at it. Now that's pretty cool. But it's a gimmick, yes. I acknowledge the fact that it's a gimmick. But loads of things on phones are gimmicks. I mean, it is a fact that most people only use 30% of what their smartphones can do anyway. 30%. Now, a smartphone can make phone calls, but really these days, phone calls are probably low down on most people's priorities for a phone. One, they want it to look cool. The Amazon phone, in my opinion, is cool. It looks professional. It doesn't look like a toy phone. It's got weight behind it, and it has a 13 megapixel camera and so on. So I think for coolness, I think the Amazon phone ticks the box. They want it to be able to get Premiere apps. Now, you compare it to Lumia. On Lumia, there are still a lot of apps that you can't get, a lot of major apps. But on my phone here, I have major apps. I have Instapaper, I have Netflix, I have WordPress. These are all major apps that can be bought from the Amazon App Store. Major apps. So Netflix is here. So Netflix isn't an Amazon, that's a rival to obviously Amazon Instant Video. Obviously I've got Amazon Instant Video on here. I have Facebook Pages Manager. So I have a lot of the major apps on here, plus obviously, books. There are lots of books on here. The sound quality is very good. That's been criticised. They said, oh, well, the sound's a little tinny. Well, on this phone, there are stereo speakers at either end, so top and bottom, stereo speakers. So when you hold it in landscape and you listen to it, it is high quality stereo sound that you're listening to, as opposed to a single speaker on most iPhones. In fact, I don't think there is an iPhone yet. I don't mind being corrected, but there isn't an iPhone yet with stereo speakers. And one thing I want to say, before people criticize this, people, as I said, should realize what people actually use phones for. For the average person, this phone, the Amazon Fire phone, would be more than adequate. Most people don't do spreadsheets on their phones. Most people very rarely copy and paste on their phones. Most people will buy a phone and then just use it for Facebook. So they'll say, oh yeah, I would love a Samsung Galaxy S6. And then they get a Samsung Galaxy S6 on a contract which is around £45 a month. And then what do they do on it? Well, Facebook. So really, I could mention over half a dozen phones, whether it is an Ace 3, the new Ace 4. There are plenty of phones. You could use a Samsung Galaxy Neo, and still you could do most of the things that the average person wants to do on a phone, which is Facebook, Twitter, and watch videos on YouTube. You don't need to have a phone like this to do that. But this phone covers it and then some. The sound quality is excellent. The accessibility is excellent. Now, that's an important thing for obviously blind and partially sighted users. Accessibility is excellent. And I think the criticism of this phone, just for the fact that it hasn't been Googleified, I think is absolutely ridiculous. And I think it borders on snobbery. The specs, technically, are excellent. The look of the phone, as I said, it doesn't look like a toy phone. It doesn't look like a gimmicky phone. Yes, if you don't like the dynamic perspective with the lenses on all corners, that may not be your thing. Then buy another phone. Now, a lot of people said that this phone was overpriced. Of course it was overpriced. 600 and odd for any phone is overpriced. I think iPhones are overpriced. Most of the flagship phones are overpriced. And they could be lowered probably by a couple of hundred if they stepped. And now Lumia have proved that. Because even though you look at the build quality of most, even of the cheaper end of Lumias, whether it's a 520 or a 530, the build quality is better than a lot of the mid-range Samsungs or the mid-range Sony Xperias. The build quality is way better. So what people need to concentrate on doing is tailoring the phone to their needs. Instead of just saying, right, this phone doesn't have any of the Google services, when you rarely use any of the Google services. And by the way, Spotify is also on that phone. So once again, Spotify, a major, in fact, in my opinion, the most, appealing of the music streaming services, is available on the Amazon Fire Phone. So I think, I think people criticize, and there was only one interview that I did watch where the gentleman kind of agreed with me, and he said, well, the only people who are objecting to the Amazon Fire Phone are techies, because they get all technical about it, about the processors and the color saturation and all these things. This is a highly spec'd phone, and I think people who criticize it, should think again. And with all the criticism, this phone has lowered in price. I picked this phone up for £135. £135, and it's being bought in by a lot of the second-hand phone shops for very little, because they say, oh, well, it's Amazon. People aren't attracted to Amazon. Well, people aren't attracted to Amazon because people aren't pushing it. Say, look at this phone. Gorilla Glass 3. Back and front. Solid specs. 13 megapixel camera. Most people, would be happy with a 5 megapixel camera, because the only thing most people use them for are selfies. So you've got a 13 megapixel camera, so you can take pictures of your kids or pictures of your schoolmates doing stupid stuff. So you could do that on a mid-range to a cheap phone. This is not a mid-range phone, this is a high-end phone. As I said, 2.2 quad-core processor with 2 gigs of RAM, which, up against an iPhone 6 has a 1 gigahertz of RAM. It's a 1 gigahertz of RAM against 2 gigahertz. So you've got 1 gigahertz, 2 gigahertz. Which one would you take? Most people would take the iPhone 6. Well, I would ask you to think again, and I would ask you to think of the Amazon Fire Phone. So leave your comments below. Have you tried the Amazon Fire Phone? Have you kind of seen it in the phone shops and considered it, but discounted it because of the bad publicity it's got? Then leave your comments below, subscribe to the channel, and take a look at the Amazon Fire Phone, people. This is Jeff Cummings. This was Hard Ass Reviews, and I'll speak to you all very, very soon. Bye for now.